Everybody, I'd like to call to order the February 20th meeting of the Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency. The first item is roll call, and I'll observe that we have Director Hilliard here as a substitute for Vice Chair Marble. We have Director Davies here. Director Lee is not able to attend, and I'm the Chair, Joe Cravoza. So we have a quorum at the meeting. Pleased to have Dave Phillips here from University of California, and Supervisor Saylor, who's with us as well today, has stepped out, but he'll be coming in just a minute. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I'd like to ask our General Manager, are there any adjustments to the agenda you'd like to propose?
No adjustments.
Okay. Could I have a motion? Okay.
Second.
Moved by Director Davies, seconded by Director Hilliard. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. We'll move now to public comment, and I'm pleased that we have a public comment. So it's Douglas Reed. I'd like to invite you to come up, and pleased to have you here and to address us.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to bring a couple of things to your attention as a board governing the water treatment plant.
And Douglas, would you like to maybe just state your name for the record, although
okay.
I did, and then if you want to, where you're from or any slight...
My name is Douglas Samaya Reed. I figured I'd dispense with that. But my name is Douglas Samaya Reed, and I'm a resident of Woodland.
Okay.
I'm not representing the organization or anything like that coming here.
Okay.
These are just my own comments. But I recently attended the Meet the Contractor event that was held in Davis. And there was a comment made that I asked a question on, and that comment was that the plant was being designed to not only cover all of the situations that we could run into now with the constituents in the water, but also for the next 20 years. I asked the obvious question, where did you get that information to do that, and also incorporate that into the design? I was told that I was being referred to the State of California website. I looked. I didn't see it. So I took it a little step further, and I contacted the Water Board. And I said, what do you have that would allow anybody to do this? And they said they don't have it. They can't even predict what they're going to do in the next 20 years. So how that's not misleading the public, I don't know. But I still haven't gotten an answer to that. I would like to officially lodge a request for that, which I will do in writing as well. I also attended the Water Utility Advisory Committee meeting when they were issuing the contract or accepting the contract for the plant. And I was actually barred from speaking on this, which was inappropriate, because they said that the chair said, well, you made a public comment period in the public comment period section, so you can't talk again. And if you want to stay after and talk to those people, if they're willing to talk to you, fine, but you can't talk anymore, which is totally inappropriate, and I've addressed that issue appropriately. Hopefully that won't happen again, but we'll find out on Monday. So in any case, there was that as well. But the issue that I had, after 25 years of my own experience working for an international contractor, I know how change orders work, and I know how contractors make a lot of money on change orders. And the answer that I got when I did ask the question afterward, and the two gentlemen that answered the question for me were very kind to stay after and talk to me at length, but the answer I got was essentially, we don't expect to find any buried Volkswagens out there, and that CH2M Hill has been very honest and forthcoming, which, by the way, they couldn't answer the question about the 20 years either, because I talked to them after that first meeting. So in any case, today you are going to be, and I would bet a nickel, as my old construction boss used to tell me, that you will actually be approving item number 4 today, which is a change order to CH2M Hill. It doesn't say anything about Volkswagens. So again, are we misleading the public? Because in the newsletter that was handed out at that January 23rd meeting, it says on the back, I'm sorry, I'll have to put these on to see it. It says, this service contract guarantees a high-quality facility, fixed project costs, and minimal changes during construction. Well, how much have we constructed now? And we're already issuing change orders, and they're not for the things that we were led to believe that they would be. I just thought you ought to hear that from somebody from the public who actually was in that situation. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you. And I think 4 we'll get to when we get to 4. But unless my colleagues object, I'd like to just be assured that our general manager will sync up here. You know, public comment isn't a exchange back and forth time, but I think that the statement, if we're making a statement that's guaranteeing compliance with unknown regulations for 20 years, we need to make sure that that's accurate or dialed back, quite frankly, if we can't justify that, which I don't think we can. So.
I think if I heard the gentleman correctly, the guarantee was with respect to the contract and the deliverables under the contract. We have represented that the treatment plant processes that we're using are state-of-the-art, are not only capable of meeting the current regulations, but we anticipate them being able to meet future regulations as well. And when we say that, what we really focus on and mean is pharmaceuticals, personal care products, and because of the processes that we're using, ozone in our filtration system, those particular processes do a very good job on those emerging contaminants that the regulators are looking at but have not yet regulated.
I think that's an important caveat, though, to make sure is there in the public statement. So.
Yes.
Okay, good. And I would certainly encourage as much frank back and forth here as possible. All right, I'd like to move now to agency business. Under first item is our consent items, A through E, including approval of our January 16, 2014 minutes, project financing update, treasurer's report, the outreach plan for construction, and the energy efficiency update, which I greatly appreciated.
Move consent.
Okay, so we have move consent by Director Davies.
I need to probably abstain from number A or letter A, but beyond that, I would second.
Okay, second. Legal counsel, if there's an abstention.
Yeah, the abstention is a problem because the way your governing board is set up, we'll need 3 affirmative votes. So the choice is for Mr. Hilliard. You can either vote for it on the basis of staff's representation and your colleagues' representation that they're accurate, or we can put that matter over for the next agenda. Either way is fine.
I accept staff.
Do you accept?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Okay,
So
consent item is moved and seconded.
Seconded.
All those in favor signify by saying
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Move now to the project update of the Davis Woodland Water Supply Project. And here, Dennis Deemer, taking us through what has become now this very standard first up in every Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency board meeting. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair Cravoza and board members. We had a presentation at our board meeting last January 16th, so I'll go through this fairly quickly. I do want to spend a little bit of time on the mid-year budget update. There is a separate memo in your packet that goes into more detail, but at the end of this presentation, I'll summarize that information for you. We'll go through some of the recent accomplishments, our upcoming activities and milestones, touch briefly on the project cost and schedule, and then the mid-year budget update, as I mentioned. Grants and loans, not much has changed since our presentation last month. Woodland does have an application for the Safe Drinking Water, SRF. They have, as I understand it, last Tuesday decided to proceed with accepting the notice of application. So that will set that loan in motion for the city of Woodland, and then allow the health department staff to prepare the necessary loan documents. With respect to the Clean Water SRF, which covers the entire regional SRF facilities, both the State Board and the EPA have approved 30-year loan terms, and we continue to work with them on finalizing our application. With respect to grants for the intake, again, we've got $13.7 million committed. We're seeking an additional $3 million to complete the federal portion of the commitment. There is a delegation that is going back to Washington March 3rd through 6th. Will be represented by myself and Dr. Marble. And the purpose of that visit will to secure the remaining $3 million in funds.
I think Don's got a question.
I have a question on the slide, the previous slide on the safe drinking water loans and applications. I think the city of Davis you had an application for a loan that was, I thought, scheduled for a hearing on the 18th of February. Do we know if that, how?
That did not happen. It's been postponed. There's some additional review and work that needs to get done before that's ready for approval.
Okay.
And we don't have a new date at this point, but we're working with the state board to try and resolve their issues and concerns.
That's at the staff level with the State Water Resources Control Board staff, kind of getting their
That's right.
questions answered. Good.
That's right.
Okay.
So in terms of the state portion of the joint intake grant funding, that's also $16.7 million. As you recall, we have $10 million already committed, and we're working to get the remaining $6.7 million included in the FY15 budget.
Dennis, with the governor's amount that he talked about today, is some opportunity there for that? Because, we're shovel ready, and I'm sure you're all over that, but I just wanted to know I was paying attention as well.
Yes, actually, we had a conversation with our representative, with our advocate this morning, and it is a potential source for funding, and one that might be easier to accomplish if that $687 million wasn't moving through as part of a drought package. A lot of activities underway with CH2M Hill. I won't go through a lot of detail here, but they continue to meet all of their milestones, all of their submittals, and the agency continues to turn them around in a timely fashion. So you'll see when I get later in the presentation, they have a very aggressive schedule, and so far they're meeting all of the milestones and requirements necessary to start construction in April. They've given us a permitting matrix for review. This is something they didn't have to do, but it's something that allows us to cross-check all the permitting work that we've done in the past to make sure that nothing drops through the cracks and that all the permits that are required for construction are in fact obtained and in place prior to the construction. A bit of update news on the intake. We're out to bid right now. The engineer's estimate, there's four contractors that have been pre-qualified. The bids are due March 5th, and the engineer's estimate is $43 million. And that $43 million is consistent with the budget that we've got for our overall program. Last month, you approved all the construction financing and O&M agreements with RD 2035 and with CPG, so we're set to move forward quickly once the bids come in. They've been reviewed. Move forward with award, and we have all of the mechanisms in place to jointly carry out that project. Also, since our last meeting, the injection testing for the ASR project in Woodland was initiated, and that work is continuing, and we'll have a more complete report for you next month.
Dennis, could you go back? Sorry. What's the difference between the $32 million, the funding that we're seeking from the state and feds that's coming along very, very well, and the 43?
So
what's the delta?
The delta is the agency costs that are not grant fundable, so it's the agency's pumps and electrical equipment and gear. What's being replaced is the intake that is there now, so we're sharing in the grant funding of the common facilities, but anything that's strictly an agency component is not grant funded. So that's the delta.
Because it's federal CBPIA money, and so is that the controlling limitation on the 32?
Yes.
But would there be any possibility of getting, more than 16 million then from the state to support, agency side stuff?
It's possible, but what we're trying to establish, first of all, is the commitment, the match, the 50% match, which has historically been the practice. And then we are looking for additional sources of funding, and in fact, the delta, that's the agency's responsibility, is included in our SRF application. So as a minimum, the portion that's left over and that's the agency responsibility is in our SRF applications for low-interest loans. And if we're successful in getting the $6.7 million, then by all means, we can try and get additional funding from the state beyond that.
Right. because I mean, I just continue to think in my mind as, you know, whether it's near-term or long-term, you know, obviously the water bond discussion goes on, whether the water bond is BDCP related or not, or, you know, conservation related, or, you know, ag or urban, all those different pieces. I just hope we're kind of keeping those in. I can't imagine we're not.
Yeah, we're keeping our eye on, you know, available current opportunity as well as things that are being planned for the future.
Okay, thanks.
So with respect to permitting, we're still waiting for our 404 permit and our 401 permit from the state. These are really the last two significant permits that are required for the project. We need an incidental take permit from the state of California before we can obtain those other two permits. As part of the incidental take permit and as part of the biological opinions that have already been issued, we're going to need to purchase environmental mitigation credits. We've received updated proposals from the two land banks that are selling those credits, and we'll be bringing, hopefully, to you next month a recommendation for the purchase of those credits. It's important that those get purchased because they're needed prior to the initiation of construction. And then finally, and this is a fairly important accomplishment, the California Department of Public Health issued a conditional letter of approval for CH Tuam Hill's proposed design. That's a very important milestone. It basically says that what they're proposing, and if they follow through, should be permittable at the end of the construction period. You have a copy of that letter in your packet. Upcoming in the next 2 to 3 months, we'll obviously continue to pursue loans and grants that I mentioned previously. We still need to secure the WAPA power at the intake, and our efforts to have PG&E finalize their design, provide us with a price, and start moving some of the existing transmission mains and poles out of the way is becoming increasingly important, so we'll be keeping our eye on that. As I mentioned, we'll be completing the injection testing for Woodland's ASR program. Permitting, we get the incidental take permit, then we'll be in position to get the 404 and the 401, and we'll also be working on our completion of the mitigation credits. Land and right-of-way acquisition, this is the same slide that I think we looked at last month. We do still need to finalize the escrow, the transfer of the water treatment plant site from Woodland to the agency, and that's very close. And then we have two final property easements to obtain, the one with the railroad where we have an agreement in principle or a deal that's been negotiated that has to be finalized and pen put to paper on. And we have one remaining parcel along the Davis finished water transmission main, which belongs to Mr. Lillard. And we're in the process of updating that appraisal and hope to be able to sit down with Mr. Lillard in the next few weeks to complete that transaction. As I mentioned, we'll receive bids on the joint intake facility on March 5th. The plan is for CH Tuam Hill to begin construction at the water treatment plant site on April the 8th. We are still working with the Farm Bureau regarding the closure along Road 22. We do have some time there before CH Tuam Hill plans to start construction. And we do continue our efforts with Terra Verde to identify opportunities for renewable energy. And Terra Verde and CH Tuam Hill are coordinating between on the use of the on energy use at the water treatment plant. And I should mention in your packet there's an expanded version of the efforts underway for energy utilization that involves the work that Terra Verde is doing, the work that CH Tuam Hill is obligated to do, and then a recent analysis performed by West Yost where they looked at the advantages and disadvantages of storage to offset energy usage. Again, this is just more of the submittals that are required by CH Tuam Hill, and you can see, you know, a lot of activity here in the next month in terms of final design packages, and then we'll start to see submittals on the process equipment for procurement, and again, things are moving quickly and according to the accelerated schedule that they had provided us. Want to point out that we have finalized the date for our groundbreaking ceremony, April the 10th, Thursday at 10 a.m. We have a monthly project status summary was issued on February 17th. You have a copy of that at your places. It's our intention to, every month, when we get the detailed reports from CH2M Hill and from our consultants, to summarize that in a user-friendly, reader-friendly fashion and post it on our website, so you have a copy at your places. We've also finalized our next water bill insert, and that also is at your places, and that'll start going out shortly. And Kim has come up with a construction hotline card and signage for the project. You have copies of those at your places as well. If you have any comments on that, please let myself or Kim Floyd know soon. And in your packet, under the consent calendar items, you do have a public outreach plan that includes these items as well as activities that are planned and scheduled in conjunction with CH2M Hill as the project moves into construction and we have more interaction potentially with the residents over the actual construction activities. This is the same slide that I showed you last month. We're still at $228 million for the total project cost. We are planning to update these costs from an inflation standpoint and then to reflect changes that have been made in the overall project and bring that back to the board in April. One of the things that, for example, that will be updated is the addition of the woodland storage, some updated cost information for the distribution improvements in both the city of Woodland and Davis. So we'll incorporate those changes and update for inflation and bring that back in April. Now, this is a slide that I wanted to show you that is a cumulative and monthly projection of CH2M Hill's expenditures. So far they've invoiced and completed about $4 to $5 million worth of work. But as you can see, as we get into June, April, May timeframe, we are going to be billing at $3 to $3.5 million per month. And by the time we get to this time next year, they're going to be at $10 million, $12 million a month. So, I mean, it's consistent with the contract. It's consistent with the schedule. We've looked at the cash flow, and this is a very reasonable amount of money to expect to spend over this period of time. And the reason I present this and mention this is that things are going to start moving very quickly here over the next several months as they get into construction. The schedule you saw last month, again, the pipeline acceptance test completion, June of 2016, which their schedule, that's 3 months ahead of schedule, ahead of the contract required schedule. So if there's no questions on the overall program update, I did want to spend just a couple minutes on the mid-year budget. So you have a detailed memo in your packet, and when we approved the FY14 budget last June, it was for $32.15 million. So just this past month, staff has reviewed the actual expenditures through December 31st, through the first 6 months, and then did an update of the projections for the remainder of the fiscal year. What we found was that we're actually going to save $1.31 million. In the primary areas where these savings were realized, public outreach. We had originally anticipated that we were going to do bill inserts, bill mailers, or separate mailers rather. And what we found out is we could put the updates right in the bills, and that saved a lot of money in terms of mailing cost. The DBO procurement went much quicker than we had anticipated. We ended up with just the one bidder. We did not have to spend the $250,000 to reimburse other successful proposers. Water rights assistance, permitting, and right-of-way acquisition assistance all just went more quickly than what we had planned and budgeted, so we had some savings there. We identified a budget, I call them quote-unquote increases of $2.25 million, but 1.78 of that is not increases. It's just an acceleration of the payments this fiscal year to CH2M Hill. So it doesn't change the total contract cost of $141.2 million. It just moves it up earlier in the calendar than we had anticipated. And then there were about $470,000 of items that did go up. SRF loan assistance for Woodland had 2 applications rather than 1, which is actually a good thing. Gave Woodland different choices and options to choose from. Also included in that $90,000 is the additional analysis and work that was expended to negotiate the extra storage at the treatment plant. So we had a guaranteed not to exceed $3.5 million cost. Actually, that was brought in for $2.9 million. Property easement purchases a little higher than anticipated at $87,000, and then additional work to get the agency's pumps and equipment incorporated into the joint intake project design. So conclusions, the approved budget is sufficient to cover the expenditures for the remainder of the fiscal year. We'll need to use about $900,000 of the contingency. We had a contingency of about 1.86, so we're okay there. We've also looked at the consultant contracts and their authorizations, and we're okay through the end of the fiscal year with respect to all of the consultant services that we need. And then finally, based on this review and update, we will be sending out invoices to the 2 cities in accordance with the schedule that we had established when the budget was approved last June. Any questions on the budget update?
Don?
I think that this board is well served by this level of information about changes. I think that this will be very useful as we go forward, and people in the public appropriately ask, well, what happened with all of that? And I think this level of complete information about changes, whether they're up or down, is really appropriate and essential for a project of this sort that needs to be completely transparent to the public. So I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you. I think it was, we were very pleased with the outcome of the review. Because if you remember last June when we put the budget together, we didn't have CH2ML under contract. We didn't have a final price. We didn't have a final schedule. So I think it was important for us to go through this review right now to reestablish the fact that the budget that we did have is sufficient to make it through the rest of the fiscal year.
It's very helpful. Dennis, could you go back to slide 8?
Oops.
And could you just, the 3rd and 4th bullets, continue efforts to secure WAPA power at joint intake. That is not expected to happen anytime soon, right? That's a 15-year project?
No. Actually, it's, with respect to the WAPA power for the intake, it's the expectation in the plan is to have that available at the intake when the new intake goes into operation, and for the agency to share in that WAPA power. For the water treatment plant, that's a 15, 20-year down the road exercise.
So even our 20% of the intake, we hope that 20% we're going to be able to work the agreements in such a way that we'll be getting low-cost WAPA power for our 20%
Yes.
of the intake. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So I
in
lost
fact,
track of that.
the agreements that the board approved last month with RD 2035 laid out how that cost sharing and the agency's participation will take place.
Got it. Right. And the PG&E is all of the.
Yeah.
But the PG&E, you've got joint intake there too, and I think PG&E
Right.
is just the regional water treatment.
Well, the power demand is going to be higher at the new intake, and it's got the fish screens. It's got more pumping required. It's also going to have our facilities there, so the service has to be sized for the new joint intake. And that's more on a critical path because they need to get in and start working soon. And there's a couple of power poles that are in the way that need to be relocated. And then, the full design and construction or delivery of power by PG&E needs to be finalized. And then separate from that and on a less of a critical path is the power that's going to be needed for the regional water treatment plant. but we have time there, and in talking to PG&E, that's a little bit more straightforward than what needs to be done at the intake.
Okay, I got it, thanks. Anything from my colleagues? Dave, Jim?
Any questions?
Skip?
Anybody else?
Yeah, anybody in the audience like to, any questions? Okay, all right, very good. Thank you very much, Dennis. Let's move to item 3. This is the amendment to promissory notes to Conway Preservation Group. Dick, you're going to take us through this. This is a compilation of a lot of activities.
Yes, sir.
Last, couple months.
This is a follow-up item to the package of agreements with CPG in 2035 that the board approved last meeting. As part of the water right purchase agreement with CPG that you entered into several years ago, the cities of Davis and Woodland negotiated a prepayment right over the term of the 24-year term. CPG, in their evaluation of the income stream they are about to acquire, has decided they want to monetize or sell that income stream in exchange for cash, and they concluded that in doing so, the existence of the open-ended or the full 24-year term city prepayment right created somewhat of a cloud on their financing, and they requested of the agency and the two cities that the cities agree to cease their prepayment right at the time the cities monetize. This is an issue that primarily affects the two cities, so consequently the agency board deferred action on this item, and as the city council members know, and wearing those hats, these items have come to each city council over the past month, and they were approved by the city council, both city councils. Because the water agency is also a party to the subject agreements, it needs to be approved by this board, and staff recommends approval. There's actually four separate documents that need to be amended, and they're listed in the staff report. So consistent with the action of the city councils, agency staff recommends that the agency likewise approve the amendments to these 4 contracts. Any questions?
Questions of Dick?
I'll move the approval.
Okay. Moved by Director Davies.
Second.
Second by Director Hibbert. Any public comment or questions on this? I mean, really, this just does kind of codify and bring in all of the different pieces of work that have been going on. Really, actually, it started brewing in December, even. Okay. Okay. We'll move to the motion then, or action on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. All right. Move to item 4. This is the change order. Let's see, for CH2M Hill. Reference to public comment. Dennis.
Yes, Chair Carboza, this is a recommendation to approve change order number 2 to CH2M Hill. This change order is associated with additional storage at the water treatment plant. Back in October, when the board approved the CH2M Hill contract, included in that contract was an option for Woodland to pay for and for CH2M Hill to build additional storage at the treatment plant site. At that time, there was a not-to-exceed cost of $3.5 million, and subject to Woodland's approval, the board gave the general manager, your general manager, the authority to approve that change order. So staff did meet with CH2M Hill, did negotiate the construction cost for that additional storage. Came in at $2.914 million, so significantly under the $3.5 million not to exceed number, and I subsequently approved that change order number 1. When we presented the service contract and this option to the board back in October, we did not include the ongoing O&M cost associated with the second tank and with the additional pumping and appurtenances that go with that. So what's before you this afternoon is a recommendation for a change order to the service contract, which is the 15-year contract, $3,000 a year for the preventative operation and maintenance costs associated with those new facilities.
Okay. And that'll be covered by the City of Woodland?
That's correct.
We're going 50-50.
I love the way Skip works.
You make that motion and I'll,
I got two. You don't want me to make that move.
motion with 2 votes does not pass. As Dick is told. All right. Let's see, could I question
the bylaws so the two of us could vote?
Yeah.
But anyhow, any questions from my colleagues on that? I mean, it's, you know, and I actually would love to hear from representatives of Woodland if you'd like. And this is, you know, we're doing this to kind of codify what you guys would like.
Yeah, this is my understanding a project that we were going to be bringing on in the next 3 years anyway, and so by moving it up and having a lower cost, I see it as a win-win. So I'm excited to see this come forward.
And there was a lot of analysis done by Greg and his staff with regards to where this additional storage could be located to best serve our city and at the least expense. And through their analysis, this site was the best site for the city. We have another storage tank that we're building now at the west side of the city, and so we need those two capabilities. And so it's here. It wasn't all part of the original agreement. We weren't ready yet. We are going to pay for the building, and this is the maintenance and the operation of that tank, and it's part of our O&M for our ongoing ratepayers throughout the year. But it is according to the experts, it's the best place and the most logical location for this tank, the second tank. So that's where it's coming from, Joe. And is that basically correct, Greg? Yeah, thank you.
Any public comment on this item? All right, I'd like to ask for a motion then.
So move.
Okay. Moved by Director Hilliard, seconded by
I'll second the item.
Director Davies. And further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries 3-0.
And Chair Carboza, while we're on the topic of change orders, I might take this opportunity to just point out that at your places is a table that shows the change orders that have been executed to date, the one that you just executed, and one that is within the general manager's authority. At a couple of meetings ago, you had asked that we provide a regular update of change orders, including both the ones that the board approves as well as the one that you've delegated authority to your general manager. So this table is what we've come up with to show that, and we'll be providing that to you on a regular basis at each of our meetings. And if you have any questions on the content or format, we'd be happy to address those.
Good, thank you. Don?
Can you remind me what the threshold for the general manager's approval is?
It's a cumulative of $1.5 million and an individual of $75,000.
Okay. And do you have a process, is there a process that includes a proposed change order or some early indicator that something is coming?
Yes, what we'll do, and as we've done on this form here, is we'll put in the second column pending, and we'll try to identify a change order item as soon as we become aware of it and provide as much information as we have at that time to make sure the board knows what's coming.
Okay. Again, this is a very strong practice for managing a project of this size, to have those thresholds that you're describing and full disclosure of approved and pending issues. So good job.
Thank you.
Don. We'll move now to item 5, and this is consideration of approval of the several percentage methodologies that we're using in the project to allocate costs between the various partners. And again, this is a bit of a summary and a codification of what we've done, but I'm very appreciative of staff pulling it all together into really one document, again, having the name of transparency so we all understand this. And I will acknowledge that to the public, this is another item where, given all of these different percentages that developed over time, it is good to have them all in one place. So with that, Dennis, would you like to take through further details?
Sure. I'll just very briefly describe, the reason that we're bringing this forward. And The JPA has a discussion and a very specific table that allocates cost by different facilities. The CH2M Hill contract, and consistent with industry standards, when they bill on a monthly basis, it's going to be based on percent complete for permitting, planning, design, construction. The agency has come up with a methodology to allow for us to pay the construction bills and assign costs between the two cities based on a composite percentage. And that percentage is in your staff report, 46.87% for Davis and 53.13% for Woodland. Through the analysis that the staff performed, it was performed in a way, and this is very important, that the composite percentages track and end up with the cities paying the exact same amount as they agreed to and is codified in the JPA document. And it just provides us a tool to efficiently and effectively assign the cost as the bills come in from CH2M Hill and the consultants that are supporting that effort.
Questions from the board?
Comment?
Sure.
I think it's really good to show it this way. It does make it much clearer on a line-by-line look at it, especially for the public to see that we are sharing 50% in some areas, but we have a prorational share on the others. So I like the way it's set up. Thank you.
Others? Any comments from the audience? Okay. Could I have a motion to approve item 5?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Director Hilliard, seconded by Director Davies. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Long-range board calendar. Indicated a couple of days for the Washington, D.C. trip and the April 10 groundbreaking.
And then in your packet is the long-range calendar, and it identifies the activities in March. It does look like that we're going to need a board meeting in March. Hopefully we'll be bringing a recommendation to you to concur with the award of the joint intake project based on our hopefully successful bids on March 5th. And we'll be hopefully bringing to you the recommendation to purchase mitigation credits for the joint intake and for possibly for the rest of the project, although that might spill over to April. And we're keeping our eye on the SRF agreements, and hopefully as soon as we have a date, we'll put those on the long-range calendar as well. And if the board has any questions or items that they don't see on here or things that need to adjust because of your personal calendars, please let us know.
Would you like a motion on this?
I don't. I think it's more just for your information and let us know if there's any follow-up that we need to do.
Very good. Okay. With that, let's move to correspondence. We have one. This California Department of Public Health conditional approval of the design, which you referenced earlier. Dennis, anything else from you or any directors? Richard? Okay. Let's move to Technical Advisory Committee comments. Herb, Greg?
I have nothing to report, sir. Yeah, as was stated, the ASR project is moving forward. We're very happy with the preliminary results, and we're looking forward to the results of the actual study. The above-ground tank is in the west of the city, is currently getting its roof put on. It'll be poured next week, and after that they'll be wrapping the tank and gunite it at the same time. Be a very interesting process. The east trunk line is in the procurement process, and the west trunk line is currently the design's being finished and being prepared. Thank you.
Greg, are you holding an art competition in the community to see who'd like to design the art on the outside of the tank?
We get our art for free.
It's a wonderful. It's a wonderful project. Be happy to share staff reports and experience on that, whatever we can do in the name of.
Yeah. Actually, I think that the color of the tank will be put in the gunite so that we don't have to worry about repainting, fading paint, that kind of, so it's going to be settled that way.
How about just one piece of, you could just say Davis and an arrow and a number of miles.
Yeah, if you want art, go that way. All joking aside, we went through a lot of community angst, and we approved art, and we were beat up in the papers continually. But we basically took the money that it would have cost to paint it, and we gave that to some artists in a competition. And we really do have one of the best-looking water towers in the Central Valley, as far as I'm concerned. It's really
I would do it again in a heartbeat. I think it's amazing.
I still remember that night when we approved that, and we looked through all the artists. There was a lot of bad art, and there was one piece of beautiful art that we got. So, joking aside, it actually was a really neat process in Davis. Good. All right.
We'll take that under consideration.
Yeah, thank you. Not telling you how to do your job.